How art became propaganda. Part 1. When images became history. Every great work of art tells a story. Some tell the truth, others tell the version that someone wanted remembered. The challenge is knowing which is which. Imagine standing before the towering walls of an ancient temple. A victorious king rides into battle. His enemies flee in panic. His people celebrate. Every carved line proclaims strength, order, and triumph. It looks like history. But is it? What if the artist omitted the fear, the confusion, the setbacks, and the suffering? What if the artwork preserved not the whole story, but only the version its patron wished future generations to believe? Long before newspapers, television, or social media, rulers understood a simple truth. People believe what they repeatedly see. A monumental statue, a painted mural, an embroidered tapestry, or a carefully designed coin could shape public opinion more effectively than speeches or written records. Art was never merely decoration. It was communication. It was persuasion. Today, we call that persuasion propaganda. Ironically, the word itself did not begin as something sinister. In 1622, Pope Gregory XV established the Congregation for the Propagation of the Faith to coordinate Catholic missionary work during the Counter-Reformation. At the time, propaganda simply meant the spreading of ideas. Only later, particularly during the 20th century, did the word acquire its modern association with political manipulation and deception. Yet the practice itself is far older than the term. Every civilization has produced propaganda. Using the artistic language of its own age, stone reliefs, statues, tapestries, paintings, posters, films, and now digital images. Art that speaks to the heart. Propaganda succeeds not because people are gullible, but because they are human. We naturally prefer stories that are simple, emotionally satisfying, and easy to remember. A clear narrative often feels more convincing than a complicated truth. The most successful propagandists have always understood this. Artists tell stories through images. Propagandists tell stories through emotions. Rather than inviting careful reflection, propaganda often appeals directly to pride, fear, hope, loyalty, or anger. Such emotions can become more persuasive than facts, because they encourage people to respond instinctively rather than critically. Across history, the same techniques appear again and again. Leaders are portrayed as heroic, victories are celebrated, while defeats disappear. Opponents become villains, and symbols are repeated until they begin to feel like truth. Learning to recognize propaganda begins with asking a few deceptively simple questions. Who commissioned this work? Who is meant to see it? What message does it emphasize? What story has been left untold? Those questions transform works of art into historical conversations. One important question remains: what about the artists themselves? Throughout history, most artists depended on powerful patrons, kings, emperors, religious leaders, or governments, for their livelihood and protection. Some undoubtedly believed in the messages they created, while others may simply have been fulfilling professional obligations. Like writers, architects, and filmmakers today, artists often worked within the expectations of those who commissioned their work. Understanding propaganda, therefore, means examining not only the artwork, but also the relationship between artists and power. Egypt's greatest public relations campaign. More than 3,200 years ago, Pharaoh Ramesses II launched what may be history's earliest large-scale public relations campaign. Following the Battle of Kadesh in 1274 BC, temple walls across Egypt were covered with dramatic reliefs, portraying the pharaoh charging fearlessly into battle. While enemy armies scattered before him, he appears almost superhuman, single-handedly saving Egypt through courage and divine strength. For generations, these monumental carvings shaped public memory, because they were carved into temples that seemed as permanent as the desert itself. They carried an authority few people would have questioned. Modern historians, however, tell a different story. Evidence suggests that Kadesh was not a decisive Egyptian victory, but a military stalemate. Egypt and the Hittites eventually negotiated one of history's earliest recorded peace treaties. None of that uncertainty appears on the temple walls. The monuments celebrate victory while quietly erasing ambiguity. It is a pattern that would echo through history. When reality is complicated, propaganda often simplifies it into a story people want to believe. Rome turns propaganda into everyday life. If Egypt discovered the political power of images, Rome perfected it. Throughout the Roman Empire, propaganda was woven into daily life. Citizens encountered it in triumphal arches, public monuments, marble statues, and even the coins they carried in their pockets. Every image reinforced the same message: Rome was powerful, orderly, and destined to rule. The famous statue Augustus of Prima Porta presents the emperor as eternally youthful and favored by destiny, while the Era Pacis, or Altar of Peace, celebrates harmony without dwelling on the wars that made that peace possible. Together they demonstrate a recurring principle. Propaganda often succeeds not by inventing falsehoods, but by highlighting favorable truths and minimizing uncomfortable ones. The Romans also mastered another form of propaganda: controlling memory itself. When emperors fell from favor, their statues could be destroyed, their names removed from inscriptions, and their portraits erased from public monuments. Historians call this practice damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory. Sometimes power is exercised not by creating images, but by deciding which images future generations will never see. A story sewn in thread. Not all propaganda is carved into stone. Some of it is stitched into cloth. Stretching nearly 230 feet, the Bayeux Tapestry tells the story of the Norman conquest of England in 1066. Through vivid embroidered scenes of ships, kings, soldiers, and battlefields, it presents William the Conqueror as England's rightful ruler while portraying Harold Godwinson as a king whose actions justified invasion. To modern audiences, the tapestry resembles an illustrated history book. To medieval viewers, it was something far more influential. In an age when many people could not read, visual storytelling carried enormous persuasive power. The tapestry helped legitimize a new dynasty not through speeches or laws, but through carefully crafted images that appeared to record history itself. The conquest became not merely successful, it became inevitable. The printing press changes everything. For centuries, rulers depended on artists, sculptors, and architects to spread their messages. Then, around the middle of the 15th century, Johannes Gutenberg introduced movable type printing, forever changing how ideas traveled. For the first time, words and images could be reproduced quickly and distributed to thousands of people. The age of mass communication had begun. During the Protestant Reformation, both Protestants and Catholics quickly recognized the printing press as a powerful weapon. Printed woodcuts portrayed religious opponents as monsters, devils, or enemies of God. Many people could not read complex theological debates, but they could instantly understand a dramatic image. The printing press transformed persuasion from a local tool into a mass phenomenon. A picture that helped ignite a revolution. Sometimes a single image can change history. On March 5, 1770, violence erupted between British soldiers and colonists in Boston. The confrontation was chaotic, and eyewitnesses disagreed about exactly what happened. Within weeks, American silversmith Paul Revere published an engraving that transformed the event into a powerful political statement. His image showed disciplined British soldiers firing mercilessly into a peaceful crowd of defenseless colonists. The composition left little room for ambiguity. There were heroes. There were villains. The engraving spread rapidly throughout the American colonies, fueling outrage against British rule and strengthening support for independence. Historians now know the confrontation was more complicated than Revere's engraving suggests. Yet complexity rarely inspires political movements. By turning a chaotic event into a clear story of victims and oppressors, the image helped shape colonial opinion and demonstrated how visual narratives can influence history.
Part 2. From Paintings to Pixels. By the 19th century, propaganda had become more sophisticated than ever before. Governments no longer relied solely on monuments or printed engravings. They enlisted painters, photographers, filmmakers, and eventually entire media industries to shape how millions of people understood their leaders, their nations, and even themselves. The brush had become a political weapon. Painting a hero. In 1799, during his campaign in Egypt and Syria, Napoleon Bonaparte faced a crisis that no battlefield victory could solve. Rumors spread that he had abandoned, or even ordered the poisoning of, French soldiers stricken with plague in the city of Jaffa. Napoleon answered the accusations not with a speech, but with a painting. In Bonaparte visiting the plague victims of Jaffa, artist Antoine-Jean Gros portrays Napoleon calmly walking among infected soldiers, fearlessly touching one of the sick. The scene evokes biblical images of healing, transforming a controversial commander into a compassionate and courageous leader. Whether every detail was historically accurate mattered less than the emotional impression the painting created. It demonstrated a lesson that remains true today. A compelling image can shape public memory far more effectively than a lengthy explanation. When nations sold patriotism. The 20th century ushered in the age of mass-produced persuasion. Advances in printing enabled governments to flood streets, schools, factories, and train stations with posters designed to inspire sacrifice and unity. For the first time, propaganda reached millions of people every day. During World War I, Britain introduced a famous recruitment poster showing Lord Kitchener pointing directly at the viewer beneath the words, "Your country needs you." The United States soon adopted the same strategy with Uncle Sam, declaring, "I want you for U.S. Army." Both posters worked for the same reason. They addressed the viewer personally, transforming national service into an individual responsibility. The power of hope. Not all propaganda relies on fear. Some of its most persuasive forms appeal to hope. During World War II, American artist Norman Rockwell created his celebrated Four Freedoms series, inspired by President Franklin D. Roosevelt's vision of freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. Instead of depicting battlefields or enemy soldiers, Rockwell painted ordinary Americans gathered with family, speaking freely, and practicing their faith. His paintings reminded people not simply what they were fighting against, but what they hoped to preserve. Some historians regard these works as propaganda because they encouraged support for the war effort. Others see them as expressions of shared national ideals. Historians often distinguish between propaganda that deceives and propaganda that inspires. Both seek to persuade, but they do so in different ways. One manipulates information to secure obedience or suppress dissent. The other encourages people to embrace shared values or collective goals. Although the boundary between the two is not always clear, recognizing this distinction reminds us that propaganda is not defined solely by falsehood, but by its intention to shape public attitudes. Both views contain truth. Propaganda is not necessarily false. It can also amplify genuine values, while encouraging people to rally behind a common cause. When beauty serves tyranny. The same artistic techniques that inspire hope can also strengthen oppression. Few governments demonstrated this more dramatically than the totalitarian regimes of the 20th century. In the Soviet Union, brightly colored posters celebrated smiling workers, abundant harvests, and prosperous factories. The artwork projected optimism, while concealing political repression and economic hardship. In Nazi Germany, propaganda reached an even greater level of sophistication. Architecture, uniforms, music, mass rallies, and cinema combined to create carefully choreographed spectacles, designed to overwhelm reason with emotion. No work illustrates this better than Leni Riefenstahl's film Triumph of the Will. Through dramatic camera angles, sweeping visuals, and enormous crowds, Adolf Hitler is presented less as a politician than as a mythical savior. The film remains one of cinema's greatest technical achievements. It is also a sobering reminder that artistic brilliance and moral integrity are not the same thing. Beauty can persuade. That is precisely why propaganda can become so dangerous. Old techniques, new technology. After World War II, propaganda did not disappear. It evolved. During China's Cultural Revolution, brightly colored posters portrayed cheerful workers, enthusiastic students, and grateful farmers united behind Mao Zedong. Like the monuments of ancient Egypt and Rome, these images projected certainty while leaving little room for doubt, hardship, or dissent. If Ramesses II could see modern social media, he would recognize the methods immediately. Repetition, symbols, emotion, and selective storytelling. Today's memes perform many of the same functions once carried out by temple reliefs, posters, and pamphlets. Ancient Rome's Damnatio Memoriae also has modern echoes. Roman emperors erased disgraced rulers by destroying statues and removing their names from public memory. Today, digital content can be deleted, altered, or replaced, while artificial intelligence can generate convincing deepfakes that blur the boundary between reality and fabrication. Information now moves faster than ever, but the underlying challenge remains the same: distinguishing truth from persuasion. Listening to history's whispers. Museums are quiet places. Perhaps that is fitting, because propaganda rarely shouts. It whispers. A temple relief insists that a pharaoh never lost a battle. A marble statue suggests an emperor was destined to rule. A tapestry legitimizes a conquest. A painting transforms a general into a hero. A poster persuades citizens that history depends on them. A meme reduces a complicated world to a single unforgettable image. These works are more than artistic achievements. They are conversations between power and memory, between truth and persuasion. Understanding propaganda does not mean rejecting art. It means learning to look beyond the surface, asking who created the image, whose interests it served, and what stories remain untold. The greatest challenge has never been recognizing the propaganda of the past. The greater challenge is recognizing the propaganda of our own age. Every generation believes it is too informed to be deceived. History quietly suggests otherwise. So the next time you stand before a famous painting, an ancient monument, or even a viral image on your phone, pause before accepting what you see. Ask who created it. Ask who benefits from it. Ask what has been left outside the frame. And remember that every image tells two stories: the one it reveals and the one it chooses not to tell. History rarely shouts. More often, it whispers.
It's time to study new words in context. 1. Omitted. Definition: left out or did not include something. Example: the artist omitted the sad parts of the story. 2. Setbacks. Definition: problems or difficulties that slow progress. Example: the army faced many setbacks during the war. 3. Patron. Definition: a person who gives money or support to an artist or project. Example: the painter's patron paid for his work. 4. Mural. Definition: a large painting made on a wall. Example: the school painted a colorful mural on the outside wall. 5. Embroidered. Definition: decorated with designs made by sewing thread into cloth. Example: the queen wore an embroidered dress. 6. Tapestry. Definition: a large piece of thick cloth with pictures or designs woven into it. Example: the museum displayed an old tapestry showing a battle. 7. Propaganda. Definition: images used to influence what people think or believe. Example: the government used propaganda to gain public support. 8. Sinister. Definition: making people feel that something bad or evil may happen. Example: the dark house had a sinister feeling. 9. Propagation. Definition: the act of spreading ideas, beliefs, or information. Example: the organization worked for the propagation of its beliefs. 10. Counter-Reformation. Definition: the effort by the Catholic Church to strengthen its faith after the Protestant Reformation. Example: the Counter-Reformation led to many changes in the Catholic Church. 11. Manipulation. Definition: controlling people or situations in a dishonest or unfair way. Example: the advertisement was an example of manipulation. 12. Gullible. Definition: too willing to believe what other people say. Example: gullible people are easier to fool. 13. Complicated. Definition: difficult to understand because it has many parts. Example: the problem was more complicated than it first appeared. 14. Villain. Definition: a person who does bad or harmful things. Example: the movie's villain tried to take over the kingdom. 15. Obligations. Definition: duties or responsibilities that you should do. Example: she finished her family obligations before relaxing. 16. Launched. Definition: started something important. Example: the king launched a new campaign. 17. Reliefs. Definition: pictures carved into stone or another hard surface. Example: the temple walls were covered with beautiful reliefs. 18. Stalemate. Definition: a situation in which neither side can win. Example: the battle ended in a stalemate. 19. Ambiguity. Definition: a situation where something has more than one possible meaning or is not clear. Example: there was some ambiguity in his answer. 20. Dwelling on. Definition: thinking or talking about something for a long time. Example: stop dwelling on your mistakes and move forward. 21. Inscriptions. Definition: words carved or written on stone, metal, or another hard surface. Example: the ancient inscriptions told the story of the king. 22. Condemnation. Definition: strong public criticism or disapproval. Example: the decision received widespread condemnation. 23. Sewn. Definition: joined together with a needle and thread. Example: the pieces of cloth were sewn together. 24. Ignite. Definition: to start something, especially strong feelings or an important event. Example: the speech helped ignite public support. 25. Abundant. Definition: more than enough, available in large amounts. Example: the land had abundant food and water. 26. Prosperous. Definition: successful and having plenty of money or resources. Example: the town became prosperous because of trade. 27. Sophistication. Definition: a high level of skill, development, or complexity. Example: the new technology showed great sophistication. 28. Choreographed. Definition: carefully planned and organized. Example: the ceremony was carefully choreographed to impress the audience.
Comprehension questions. 1. What is propaganda? Answer: propaganda is information or images used to influence what people think, believe, or feel. 2. Where did the word propaganda originally come from? Answer: it came from the Catholic Church in 1622. It originally meant the spreading of religious beliefs. 3. Why did rulers use works of art in the past? Answer: they used art to show their power, influence public opinion, and shape how people remembered history. 4. What 4 questions does the author suggest readers ask when looking at works of art? Answer: who commissioned this work? Who was meant to see it? What message does it emphasize? What story has been left untold? 5. How did Ramesses II use propaganda after the Battle of Kadesh? Answer: he filled temple walls with carvings showing himself as a great hero, even though the battle probably ended in a stalemate. 6. What does the article say about Roman propaganda? Answer: The Romans used statues, monuments, coins, and public buildings to present their leaders as powerful and to strengthen support for the empire. 7. What was damnatio memoriae? Answer. It was the Roman practice of destroying statues and removing the names of rulers who had fallen from favor. 8. Why was the Bayeux Tapestry an effective piece of propaganda? Answer. It presented William the Conqueror as the rightful king and helped people accept Norman rule. 9. How did the invention of the printing press change propaganda? Answer. It allowed words and pictures to be copied quickly and shared with many more people than before. 10. Why was Paul Revere's engraving of the Boston Massacre so influential? Answer. It showed the British soldiers as cruel attackers and helped increase colonial anger against Britain. 11. How did Napoleon respond to rumors about the plague in Jaffa? Answer. He commissioned a painting that showed him as a brave and caring leader visiting sick soldiers. 12. According to the article, what is the difference between propaganda that deceives and propaganda that inspires? Answer. Propaganda that deceives hides or twists the truth, while propaganda that inspires encourages people to support shared values or important goals. 13. Why are Norman Rockwell's Four Freedoms paintings sometimes called propaganda? Answer. Because they encouraged Americans to support the war by showing the values they were trying to protect. 14. How is modern social media similar to ancient propaganda? Answer. Both use repeated images, symbols, and emotional messages to influence how people think and remember events. 15. What is the main message of this article? Answer. Throughout history, art has often been used to shape power, memory, and belief. By asking thoughtful questions, people can better understand both historical and modern propaganda. Discussion questions, optional. 1. Can propaganda ever have a positive purpose? Why or why not? 2. Why do you think pictures often influence people more than words? 3. How can people tell the difference between information and propaganda today? 4. Do you think social media makes propaganda more powerful? Explain your answer. 5. What lesson from this article do you think is most important for modern readers?